This is how to build peak athleticism like the top 1%. First thing, high impact training. Yes, you heard that right. I don't care if you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. You've got a high performance career. You've got a full calendar. You think just slow weight training and low impact is the way to go. High impact training. And the myth is that high impact training is going to damage you. In reality, high impact training is what keeps you youthful, young, and alive. You are growing in that context. The body is forced to adapt from your nervous system all the way to your joints and tendons, all the way to your muscles and your mind. Your mind is what is completely different whenever you are training different and whenever you're using high impact training. Now, what do I mean by high impact training? Well, this is the deal. There have been actual studies for longevity in regards to high impact training showing that there are advantages to high impact training for adding to the lifespan. And we'll talk more about this in this video and in other videos on my channel. But this is what I mean by high impact training. Mixed aerobic and anaerobic high output skills-based training. Now, don't be overwhelmed. I want to just go over what each of those mean, okay? Aerobic, we're breathing. It is requiring oxygen, a continuous flow of oxygen. Anaerobic is basically without oxygen. Not really without, because your body has some degree of oxygen. You are oxygenated depending on your lung capacity, depending on your ability, your body's ability to handle the byproducts of oxygen, having high CO2 tolerance. Those things happen in surfing and water sports and things like that, where you're actually putting yourself in situations where you're dealing with apnea skills and development and hypoxic situations, hypoxic training. But aerobic would be like running long distances where you're able to even talk and have a conversation. Maybe you're breathing a little hard. Anaerobic it can be all the way to the extreme where you're completely oxygen depleted. Not completely, there's still a little bit in there, and then the CO2 levels are really high. On top of that, you're doing high output. So it's not just like jogging, okay? You're transitioning. The very basic example would be going from a light jog to a full sprint, and then back to your light jog, and then back to a full sprint, okay? So that's an example. Now let's add the next component, which is the skills-based. So a full sprint, yes, it does utilize the entire body. There's skill involved in running and sprinting at a elite level, okay? There's skill involved there. It is its own skill. So when we're talking about skills, we're talking about things that are multi-dimensional. So not just a single repetitive motion like rowing or running or weightlifting. It is something that's going to be like a martial arts kata, a routine. Being out in the water, having to go from no movement to extreme burst of movement to recovery back to no movement. So those kind of things, going through something like full maximum output like a vault, like you might see in parkour or gymnastics, and requires that extra level of skill that so whenever a skill gets good, you don't have to think about it. But whenever you're learning a skill, you have to think about it a lot. And that process is also helpful and beneficial for cognition. So again, high impact training, yeah, hard on the body, hard on the joints, mixed aerobic and anaerobic high output skills-based movements. So that's what I mean by high impact, okay? Now, is anybody really training that way? Hardly anybody at all. Most people, if you look at stats, they're in a sedentary job. They've got a career that's demanding. Stress levels are through the roof. They're scrolling, doom scrolling on their phones. These are developing into even disorders. There's things that, you know, a very low level example of this would be just low motivation. This will develop into things like depression, anxiety. There's a whole host of physical symptoms that goes along with that. And then people start the medications, and even the most common form, self-medicating with alcohol, which shifts the whole situation, because then you're having to rely on these external things, and then you're going to go through these daily fluctuations, and so that's going to have a big impact on everything else. And so that's kind of unfortunately the common state of affairs for the masses, most of the population. And so they're dealing with joint pain and stiffness and weight issues, even as high performers in their careers, even as people that have very demanding jobs that are providing a lot of value for the world. Their body is suffering and breaking down, even if they used to be an athlete, even if they used to be a high-level athlete, maybe even a pro. And they've taken the beating through life, mentally and physically. And so shifting gears here and saying, you know what, something more is possible here, because we see other people doing it. You know, all of my students are going through this process, and many of them are high performance, no matter their age, and doing handstands, muscle-ups, vaults, rolls, flips, everything else. And so that shift that you make, okay, is going to require something very important here. And there's going to be a cost to this too. But it's ignoring the mediocre masses, okay? And that's going to be a difficult thing to do, because it's going to be tuning out the media. That's the first thing to go. Doom scrolling, you can cut that out easily, take a few days. You might go through some withdrawal. The next thing is going to be, okay, you're going to start picking up on things. How are people expressing themselves in life? You know, what are they doing? What is creating this environment in which they're declining? Okay, and so that's going to involve maybe even friends, family, etc. What does that look like environmentally? And people learn, people pick up things through osmosis. And so that's the first thing. I'm just hinting at that, right? All right, we're going to dive even deeper in just a second. But here's the deal. The next thing then, so you're ignoring. So I always say, you can't have a negative without a positive. If I say, you know, take away alcohol, you got to put something there in the place. You can't say no without a yes. You can't, or else that there's just going to be creating this void, and then bad stuff is just going to go back into that void. So you have to do something, okay? So if I say ignore the mediocre masses, get off of media, ignore it all, like all of it. What is so important that is costing you your physical health and strength and athleticism, okay? Important question. And then what is the yes? What is the do? What is the to do that's now taking the place of that void? Make it part of your life. So don't get me wrong here, okay? We can probably relate on many different levels. In terms of my life, you know, I'm not just training all day. I do train a lot because this is our business, and this is part of the craft that I seek to master, to be able to provide that in value for other people that we train through coaching, training my team, training my coaches. So there is a level of training, okay? But I'm writing, I'm speaking, I'm making videos like this. I'm training my team. I'm talking on the business level, you know, marketing, progressions, fulfillment, student success, all of these different elements, leadership, going on planning retreats, so many other factors. And if you own a business or you're an entrepreneur, you know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? So there's a whole other side of this that you don't even see. And I think a lot of people assume that I just train 8 hours a day. I do train a lot, but it's part of mastering my craft and keeping it sustainable for me. But what I've done is I've made it part of my life, and that's my encouragement to you, is make it part of your life. So you ignore the mediocre masses, you ignore the mainstream methods, you're like, okay, you're not gonna do these fitness things that just make people strong enough to get back to the office. You're not gonna listen to the media, you're not gonna listen to the negativity and the toxicity that's robbing you of years of your life, literally, and depleting your energy and taking away from the strength and movement that you have, okay? So you're not gonna do those things. That's a lot of knots. So then you've got a lot of void there to fill. Think about that for just a second, okay? That is extremely important and pivotal in this conversation right now, is that there is so much that can be removed. All the distraction, negativity, toxicity, negative thoughts, negative words from other people that accumulates in people's psyches through osmosis without them even realizing it until they become aware. Then they can let those things go, and they don't have to be a sponge. They can be more of a conduit, or just there's flow there, okay? There's flow, everything flows off. So making it part of your life. What are you doing with your family in terms of physical training? The things that you like to do in your hobbies, are they part of that training? Is that something that you're setting up as a priority? That, okay, as soon as I get these things done, I get to go and work on my muscle ups, and I get to build a handstand because I know that it's transforming other things, and quite frankly, it's just fun, okay? Building up back to that top 1%, that elite level that really you can do. But there's gonna be a cost. And it's kind of one that I don't think a lot of people are willing to make. It's kind of a big one. You won't be able to identify with mediocrity anymore. I mean, you might say, oh, that sounds good. It is, until you realize what that entails. So all those jokes about age, they're not going to resonate with you anymore. How old people feel whenever they talk about that. After watching this video, trust me, you're going to pick up on that, and you're going to hear it like half a dozen times, a dozen times of those kind of complaints from people. Oh, another day. You know what I'm saying? All those things. You're going to start to hear all of that, and it's going to be something that once you see it, you can't unsee it, okay? And you're not going to be able to identify with that mediocrity anymore. The jokes aren't going to resonate with you. The people and the activities, the sitting around eating and talking trash. You realize how much trash people talk? The jokes that don't build up. All those kind of things, you're not gonna laugh at. The shows, the programming, the brainwashing, it's just not gonna hit. And you're gonna be like, dang it, I remember that video. But then again, there's the not, so what is the to do? There's a void there. So what's gonna happen is you're gonna start to go on the hunt and search for a new tribe. You're gonna identify with new things and new behaviors and new activities. And people are gonna be pulled into your life out of nowhere because you're gravitating towards a higher level. And I don't mean to disparage anybody else, but you are transforming into something that's just new and different. And I'll put it in those terms. Everyone is on their own path in life. And like I said, it's an awareness thing. And when you start to become aware, you're going to see what things are deteriorating in other people's lives. And then you're going to probably want to start sharing that. And so, like I said, that identification with the mediocrity, you're just going to lose. You might have never identified with mediocrity anyways. You might be in a high performance career that required you to go to multiple years of university, and and then have to go through apprenticeships or go through internships or go through thesis writing or dissertation writing. And you might have that level there, but it all got pulled into the void of the vortex of professionalism and money, which is a whole different conversation. But it's time to make that realization and to put that focus back on the one thing and the only thing that you really have in this life, and that's your body. The one material thing that you have from the day to day is your body. And so it is essential that that is not overlooked, and that is part of your high performance life. And that's how you do it. Recognizing that the mediocre masses have to be ignored. Making the training and making those things, the adventures of your life, part of your whole life. Okay, I'm in Hawaii. Like, surfing is a major focus and part of what I do, and that is built upon all of the training and everything else that I've done. And then we're about to go to a retreat, workshop in Florida, and that is going to be a place where, you know, my family's there, my kids are there. We're training together, and we've just worked that into our life. And like I said, that don't get it twisted, because there's all of the business side of just being an entrepreneur. Like, that is its own category of work. Just like a physical therapist has to do the hands-on, but they also have to do the charts, and they have to go through all of their paperwork and go through the insurance and all of the procedures and protocols they have to do. It's a whole career in itself. And so you have that too, I'm sure. You have that side that's professional and career, and you've got to make your living, but you have to make it a part of your life. And then it will cost you. It's going to cost you in ways that you didn't realize. That things just won't sit the same with you. And that's okay. And that's okay, because you're breaking into new ground, and you're in a large way reclaiming what you had as a child, and you're able to get back to those higher levels. I'll see you in the next video and in training soon.